You, Katie.
Good to see you too.
All right. Hey, everybody. Anna Krueger here and the lovely
Katie Collins. Hi, everyone.
Hey, guys. We're glad you're here. We've had a ton of interest in this webinar, and I think for the first time ever, we had people typing in questions before the webinar even started. My email inbox had some questions come in. So that tells me you guys are excited and engaged for today's webinar. So we're not going to mess around. We're going to jump right in and make good use of our time. So real quick, this webinar today is really talking about a couple key things. Number one, how do you know it's time to hire an ISA? That question came in over email. So we'll hit that one. How do you know you're getting good ROI on the position? So that's an excellent question. We get all the time, how many closings should I expect? Or on the ISA, how many should I be bringing to be doing a good job? So we'll talk about how many closings will typically earn you a good ROI on the position, and that will help you set up your standards for the role. So today's going to be really more high level, not so much in the nitty gritty of here's a script for this or here's a script for that. This is more, how do you set up the department for success? How do you decide what your standards are? We're going to talk about, I have it right here, what are some typical conversion rates per lead source? So I don't know about you, Katie, but
let's get started.
Like my head, I always want to go like this. I see questions online, like with no parameters of just, oh, how many appointments do you set per week?
I know.
And I always cringe because it's like there's so many details that impact that. So we're going to get into that today. What are the details so that you can decide for your team how many appointments they should be setting? So we're going to break all that stuff down. Katie, did I miss anything?
We're also going to talk about where do we find talent, hiring people, right? What can we expect from them the first 90 days? What is the brief overview of what that looks like? But yeah, I mean, it's all higher level stuff like you mentioned. So it's going to be a good call.
Yeah, awesome. And then we had a question come in that looks like a scripting question. So what we're going to do is let's come back to that at the end if we have time. We want to focus on the title of the webinar and that purpose. But absolutely, if we have time at the end, we'll come back and hit your scripting questions. So if you have a question on something we haven't already addressed, type it in now so that way we can work it into the conversation. So Katie, let's start with the first one. People always say, how do I know it's time to hire an ISA? I'm in hiring mode right now. How do I know I should pull the trigger and do it?
Okay, one tip I have for rainmakers that are thinking about doing this is they have to be consistently closing business, right? They have to already have a pipeline that they've been working. Otherwise, they are not yet leading with revenue. Does that make sense?
Yes, because you have to have money in order to pay this person, because the ISA position, and so let's address this now, is a lot of people also asked, how do we pay this ISA once we hire them? So there's a lot of ways you can do it. The most typical way, and it's a successful way to do it, is a base pay. And that usually ranges, Katie, what do you usually see for that?
About $1,500 to $2,500 a month for a base salary. And then bonuses at closing.
Yeah. And by the way, we forgot to say who we are. I kind of assume, since we do this so often, that we're probably with our friends here, but we should probably establish that real quick. So Katie is a coach with the ISA MAPS coaching. She also was a listing agent. She sold 144 homes her first year, 144. So she really knows what she's doing, and her team had ISA. She's from the Heil group. And they were really pioneers with the ISA role. So even though she was a listing agent, she very closely worked with ISAs and knows the inner workings of all that. And then I also I was an ISA. I've been an ISA since 2006. I was then a sales manager. Then I got into real estate as an ISA from the Haro group. And now I've been coaching the role for the last 3 years. So we both have seen, we've done this long enough. We've seen what works, what doesn't work. So back to the question. I agree with Katie, $1,500 to $2,500 is typical base pay. The most common is $2,000. That's what I see. But you have to know your area and cost of living. And then what do you see, Katie, as typical commission for a closing? And by the way, if they're getting commission, they would have to be licensed. You
Right.
can't do commission to someone that's unlicensed. But what's the typical range that you see?
5 to 10% of the closed GCI for the deal that they sourced, that they set the appointment for, that the agent then took and converted.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why you need to have reserves. Back to, you need to have business coming in, because you're going to have a base pay for this person if you do that model. And so you're going to have to be able to afford them without having the closings come in just yet. You have to have some type of reserve to pay them. So Katie, what do you see as the normal, like it takes this many months to start seeing return on the roll?
So within the first 3 months, I'm measuring activity that I know is going to cause the sales to come through. So I already know within the first 3 months if they're succeeding in the role or not. But we generally reserve a 6-month cushion to actually get the return on investment in terms of commissions closed. Here's your 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to set that expectation with your ISA up front, so that they understand exactly what that timeline looks like and can budget for it.
Yeah.
Also, another really important thing is if you're sitting down with your ISA and they're telling you, I have a goal of making X amount of money in a year, great. I want to help them hit that goal as soon as possible. Just know that oftentimes in the first 12 months, they don't hit that goal because those first 3 to 6 months were a ramp up time period. But what you want to be able to do is take a snapshot of a 12-month period after their pipeline has been filled and identify if they're hitting their financial goals or not as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And by the way, guys, we love interactions. So if you're not tracking with us, or if it makes sense, let us know so we know that we're hitting the mark. It's hard teaching when we can't see you to know, like, are you with us? Is that making sense? And I have found similarly, you usually don't see ROI really at all in the first 3 months, because if you think about it, they start today and they are building the pipeline, and around the 90-day mark, 3 months in, is when they really hit their stride setting the appointments.
Right.
So that whole first 90 days, we're building this avalanche of people to set appointments with. 90 days on, they are pretty consistent setting appointments. But then you think about it, they got to meet the agent, go under agency, then they got to look for houses or list their house. And then once they go under contract, it's 45 days to close. So that's why it's really getting up to that 6-month mark before you or the ISA will really see the actual income from the hire if they're typical. So
Right.
you have a random one here there that closes earlier, but that 6-month mark is what you want to plan for. And if you get it from sooner, great.
Exactly. Okay, yeah, so just to reiterate, the lag metric that we're tracking is the appointment set closing. So in that first 90 days, like nurtures, for example, and leads that they're entering into the system are a metric we can track early on to make sure they're going to hit the lag metric of appointment set and closing. So yeah, perfect. Okay, so we're talking about when do we hire them? We know you have to be consistently doing business. There's some other things that would be most beneficial for you to have in place before you bring somebody on. One is to have a lead source for them. Be very clear about who you want them to call. Could be your own database, could be circle prospecting for sell by owners. I mean, there's so many different lead sources, right? And then a training program. So I just find so often a lot of rainmakers, like, I got my person, here they are. And Katie, they quit in 3 weeks because I didn't have anything in place. I've gone through 3 ISAs now, so I've decided to join the program. I need some help.
Yeah, totally. So actually, if you, Hannah, could put up on the screen, Hannah's moderating this for us, so thank you, Hannah. Some of you we put an advertisement for this webinar that we'd be talking about the program and how to get conversion rates from the role. And so a lot of that comes from the ISA program. Katie and I are super passionate, as well as the other coaches in our program, about helping people see the ROI, because this is one of those roles that when it's done right, you should see massive ROI. Your conversion rates should be really fantastic, but it takes getting it right, having the right scripts, having the right systems, even some guidance on how to help the ISAs and agents mesh really well, because sometimes we see that be an issue of it's almost like we're not a team, so we got to get the ISAs and agents working together. So that's why we created the ISA MAPS coaching program 3 years ago. So that information should be up on the screen. To know, if you want to learn more about it, just go to isamapscoaching.com, and there are 2 buttons you can click on. One says enroll now. So maybe you've heard about it before, you already know all about it, and you're finally ready. Just hit enroll now, and it'll take you to what you need to do to enroll. Or you can say, I really want to talk to a coach, and you actually get one of us. It's me, Katie, Annalisa. You actually get a coach that you can talk to, and we can talk through some of your scenario. So we'll come back to talking about the program in a little bit, but we wanted to just put that up there real quick. We know this can be overwhelming, and that's why we've got the program. Good deal. I see the question about, are we going to talk about scripts? And yes, just not yet. When we talk about conversion rates, we'll get into some of the scripts that will help you get those conversion rates. So hang tight.
Perfect. Okay, so we've talked about first, what's the pay? When do I know I need to hire one? When you're consistently bringing in business, when you've been leading with revenue and you have a clear idea of what you want them to do and you have some type of training program in place to support them. Also really important is a CRM. You have to have a vehicle for them to keep their leads and follow up with them. So I really hope I don't have to say this, but if you don't have a CRM, get one today. That's another key piece to making this successful.
Yeah. Totally. And we have some questions coming in saying, what are you looking for in an ISA? So I actually, right before this webinar, was with an ISA on a video call, and it was her first day making calls. And I'll tell you what I observed, because guys, she set an appointment on her first phone call, and it wasn't a woohoo, she set an appointment, but it wasn't very good. She straight up qualified that lead and set the appointment and got all the information we needed, and it was legit. So let me tell you the qualities I observed in her, and that will answer your question of what am I looking for. So she was not afraid to make calls. So I got on the call and I was like, all right, we're going to be making calls in about 20 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple scripting tips. I'm going to give you a sheet to fill out, and we're just going to get you on the phone. And part of what I wanted to see was how fearless was she? How willing was she to get outside her comfort zone? So the first couple traits are they're willing to put in the work, they're willing to get outside comfort zone, and they're not afraid to just get on the phone and talk to people. If you're interviewing someone and there's a ton of fear, there's a ton of, when am I going to get on the phone? I'm freaked out. That could be a red flag. The second thing that's really big is, do they have a teachable spirit?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's honestly one of the biggest things I look for in any hire is, do they have a teachable spirit? So what was really cool is I gave this girl a script, and I said, if you get someone that sounds motivated, immediately go through this script, fill it out, and you'll be able to set an appointment. Literally, her first conversation, the lady was motivated. So she just went through the script. She read it word for word, teachable spirit, hello. And she set a legit qualified appointment. I would have set the appointment myself, hearing everything the lead was saying. It was awesome. So you want someone who's teachable. They're not afraid to get in and do the work. Just get on the phone. Something else that's going to be custom to your team is, are they a culture fit? So different teams have different cultures. So I think you're going to have to know, do they jive well with our team and the culture here? But that's another big piece. Katie, anything to add to that?
I mean, I would say the number one thing is coachable, teachable, like you've mentioned. In interviewing people, if you can identify in situations where they have shown discipline to something, like, for example, really easy example would be if anybody that you're working with or interviewing has like ran marathons or done anything where it's like grueling day in and day out, but they do it because they see the reward at the end of the tunnel. So they're more results oriented driven, then that's a really good indication of a behavior personality fit for the role.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. So absolutely. And you can ask them, tell me about something you've done that was hard, and how did you prepare yourself for that? And that's where you're going to look for that tenacity. So I know a lot of you in here are affiliated with Keller Williams. And even if you're not, you have access to the Keller Williams Career Visioning class. I recommend that if you haven't taken it, take that class and follow their process, because truly the process of career visioning is the best way to identify, find, and hire an ISA, in just following the steps that they give you.
And one tip I want to piggyback on top of this is in career visioning and in a lot of hiring classes, they often stress using a tool to help you assess a person's behavior or personality fit. Just be careful, because I talk to so many clients that say, well, they matched perfectly with the position, their behavior, so I put them in the role and they didn't work. So that behavior analysis only accounts for, I'd say, about 30% of it. You know, a lot of people can show up the same way on a test, but be very different from each other. So just make sure you're asking more qualifying questions, and don't just stop there because it was easy to stop there.
Yeah, it's a great point. So I'm actually going to kind of interrupt the flow for a minute, because it looks like we have multiple questions back to back from different people asking about the training or the coaching. So let's just go there for a minute, and then we'll jump back into setting up the ISA role and then the conversion rates and scripts. So there's a question in here about ISA group coaching versus mastery coaching. So let's define the differences. I recommend writing this down, because there's some key components that are different that might be hard to remember because it's a lot. So the ISA group program is a hybrid. And what I mean by that is we not only have webinars, so every week there's a 1-hour webinar, kind of similar to what we're doing right now. But we go over language patterns, scripts. It's geared very specifically to lead gen or lead conversion scripts and processes. An hour every week. You also, however, get 2 one-on-one coaching calls a month. So I usually tell people, if you have someone and you're realizing, I do need some coaching to help with mindset and accountability, and we really honestly need a lot of training because we're not really sure what we're doing, we're getting our feet under us with this department, the ISA group coaching program is the way to go, because you'll get coaching and also a whole lot of training. It's 6 hours total a month. When you put it together with the webinars plus the one-on-one, you're getting 6 hours a month between group and one-on-one. Mastery coaching through MAPS is a half-hour call weekly. So it's a lot more one-on-one, yet it doesn't have the group training piece. So I think you just have to ask yourself where you are in your business. Are you looking more for weekly one-on-one accountability with, I don't really need the training. I know what I'm doing at this point. I'm more looking for some training, but really a lot more coaching with mindset and specific accountability than mastery coaching. If you're looking more for, I want the how-to, I need the scripts, I really need someone to walk me through what I'm doing and set up the department, and every other week accountability should work for me, then the ISA group coaching. So that's the best answer I can give on this webinar. If you want to be more specific about your scenario, just go to isamapscoaching.com and click on that button of I want to talk to a coach, and then we can get more granular on your scenario, because we want to put you in the right spot for sure.
Right.
Okay, let's see here. Some of these questions we're going to come back to at the end, because I want to make sure we speak to what we advertised in the webinar, so we make sure we hit the masses. So we'll come back to some of these that are asking about script.
So Anna, let me ask you, where do we find our ISAs? That's another.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I know for your team, Katie, I've heard this, and also our team, is it's usually from Sphere, people we know, or referrals from people we know. And it's because people that know you and your business know the type of person you're looking for if you explain it to them, and they're your champion, right? Like it helps you find people because you're recruiting your friends and family, your past clients, to look for this person for you. So that's honestly, at the Haro Group, that's where the majority of our talent comes from, is Sphere, past clients, or referrals from those people.
So I just want to share this perspective with you all, because this was an aha that Tim, the owner of my company, had probably about 1.5 years ago. And at that point, we had already expanded into multiple cities, and he'd been recruiting people for forever, it felt like. What he realized is people are less likely to send you a referral to help you. They are more likely sending a referral to help that referral. to help that person that they're sending to you. So what's a really key component in putting yourself out there to receive referrals is talking about the opportunity you have and how it's going to benefit that person who's joining your team, right? Also, for those of you who are in market centers, you should be reaching out to your team leaders at the market center. Their job is recruiting 24/7. Right? So tell them, hey, I'm looking for this specific type of person. I want to tell you more about what my team is offering them in terms of support, training, resources. So they're going to be much more likely to enroll people with you or to send them your way because they're confident you're going to help them meet their goals, right? And your team leader might have people right now that they've recruited to KW or to your market center, to your brokerage, whatever it is, and they might be struggling because they're an individual agent and they might really benefit from some accountability and training that they would get from your team. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to, by end of day today, set an appointment with your team leader to talk about talent.
Yeah, I am really glad you brought that up, Katie. I never really thought about that. If you get referrals because of how it will help the referral and helping people see the opportunity. I'm really glad you brought that up. Okay, so let's transition now, and we're going to talk about how to figure out what your standards should be based on ROI. And I get so passionate about this. You're probably going to see me get animated because I want to help people know how to set a reasonable standard. I hear people out there say, I need, and then they'll throw out some really high number, or I'm going to let this person go. And so I'm going to look at my phone because I did the math on here and took a screenshot. And so I'm just kind of want to walk you through setting your standard. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out how you're paying this person. So let's just say, and I wrote this down, let's just say that you are going to pay them $2,000 base pay and you are in an average price point of $250. So I actually encourage all of you guys to write this down right now so you can follow how I did the math, and then you can do it after this call for yourself. It took me a while to figure this out, so it was not easy. So assume you're in a $250,000 price point on average. You're paying them $2,000 base pay. You want to figure out what ROI do I need for this role to make sense. And I'm going to dehumanize the role for a minute. And I can do that because I was an ISA, so nobody can get their feelings hurt, right? You want to think about it as if it was any other lead source. If you were paying any other lead source a certain amount per month to generate leads for you, how many closings would you need from that lead source for it to make sense to keep that lead source around? Does that make sense? And you just have to decide what's your minimum. I've heard people say, honestly, if I had 3 times ROI, I'd be really happy with that. I wouldn't fire someone if they were bringing me 3 times ROI. That'd be great. Yeah, I'd love more, but I'm cool with 3. I've heard other people say their threshold is 5 times ROI. So you have to make a personal decision of how much ROI would you need back before you said it's just not working for me. Okay. I haven't heard anyone say less than 3. So I think that's a good benchmark or higher just from my coaching experience. So 250,000 price point, 2,000 base pay, ROI of, let's say that you want 5 times ROI in this example. So here's the deal. If you pay them 5% commission per closing, okay, and if they were to bring you, hold on, I'm doing the math, all that they would need to bring you is 2.5 closings a month, and you would make 5 times ROI. I'm going to say that again, okay? When I did all the math and hashed this out, if you paid someone 5% commission plus 2,000 base pay, and the average price point was $250, you would only need 2.5 closings a month to get 5 times ROI. And when I did this math, and I'm kind of seeing it on your face, Katie, I was actually really surprised because I had never sat down and figured that out till about a year ago. And I did it a few times, like, am I doing this right? That's such a low number. And what it made me realize is when we're out there saying, you know, I need this many appointments a day and this many closings a month, and there are these really high numbers, you might be setting a standard so high that you're getting like 15 times ROI and then letting people go when they don't meet it. Katie, is this making sense?
Oh my gosh, yes. Like if I had a nickel for every time I've heard someone say, well, I don't know what to do. My guy's only setting 18 appointments a month and I'm taking 15 of them and closing 12, but I just can't get him to 20. And I'm like, why do you need that? Like, let's talk about what success looks like in the role. And I have had some rainmakers tell me that they used to do 20 themselves. And one thing I've noticed before they hired an ISA, they were making their own calls and they were saying I would make 20 appointments a month or what have you. And you just have to be able to measure your ISA's activity. So are they actually on the phone? And then inspect what you expect. If they're on the phone, how do they sound? And then you need to just run the numbers and see, like, are their conversion rates actually stellar and you just have unrealistic expectations that need to be modified? I mean, it's not just as simple as saying, well, this guy down the street said he could do 20 a month, so my guy's doing 20 a month.
Right.
You've got to look at your specifics.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to this too is I find that the talented ISAs, if you were to actually say to them, in order for me to keep you on the team, your expectation is 3 closings a month, because you can't have a half of a closing. So 3 closings a month, and that's what I need for you to stay on the team. Most of them are like, I want to do way more than that. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's your standard. This is like the minimum that we're expecting. I find that in a coaching relationship, if I'm talking to an ISA, the rainmaker says I need 3 closings a month, that will keep you on the team. That will give me my 5 times ROI, no less than 3. We actually don't usually even talk about the 3, because the ISA's personal income goals usually require 7 to 10 or maybe even more. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, this is your minimum. So if you want to talk about more closings a month, that's fine, but make sure that you tell your ISA, this is the standard to stay on the team. Mm-hmm. Because I see people all the time letting people go, or the ISA feels like they're absolutely failing because they only brought in, 6 closings a month. And based on the math of the scenario I just gave you, 2.5 is actually 5 times ROI. That's really fantastic. So that's what I mean when I say ROI. So I want you guys to type in right now, just say, yes, I'm tracking with you, or I need you to go back over how you did that again, because this is a really key point, because this ROI conversation is how you set your standard for your whole department. Everything will flow from this. So let us know if you're tracking or if you need me to repeat it. While you're doing that, I have one more example for it. If you choose to pay your ISA 10%, then they only need to bring you 4 closings a month, and you'll get that 5 times ROI. So again, even at a higher pay, it's still not a significant amount of closings that they need to bring you to get 5 times ROI. Okay, it looks like everybody's tracking with us. Perfect.
Yay.
Yay.
Also, okay. That base salary is based on a full-time.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I just saw that question pop through.
Yeah, I'm glad we saw that. Okay, so let's now get into the conversion rates, and then after that, the script. I know what some of you keep saying. Where's the script? Hang tight. Script. Yeah, the script. We're getting there. I love your enthusiasm. So once you establish how many closings you want per month to keep this role in place, then we have to decide what lead sources and what should I expect from that standpoint. So again, if they're calling circle calls, which is basically calling a neighborhood of people and finding out, do you want to sell your house? Do you want to sell your house? Hey, what about you? That's a completely different lead source than calling expireds. 100% of the people I call on an expired list have a house to sell. So I'm going to get way more out of an expired list than I will a circle list. So I'm going to run through some of what to expect from various lead sources. If you have a specific lead source you're wondering about, type it in the box. And if I have the data on it, I'll share it with you. Katie, maybe you can check out the chat box while I read these, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so here are some benchmarks to write down. Everybody write this down. 20 contacts on average will get you 1 appointment. That's across all lead sources, and I'll break it down more in a second. However, 75 contacts will usually give you a closing. So we all know if I set an appointment, they're not all going to show. Not all the ones that show will sign. And then not all the ones that sign will actually get all the way to closing. Some of them will back out, or the job will fall through, or whatever. So 20 will typically get you an appointment. 75 will typically get you a closing, and that's across all lead sources combined. So now let's break it down per lead source. So past clients, your sphere, we know that typically 1/3 of your phone calls should be a deal. And this is based off research that we did about a year ago. That's where all this data is coming from. And also MREA by Gary Keller, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And Katie, feel free to pipe up if you've got something to add.
Okay.
For expireds or for sale by owners, you can expect 1 out of every 8 to 10 conversations will become an appointment. And that, I know for myself, that was true month after month. 8 to 10 appointment every time. So 8 to 10 contacts for expired and FSBO should earn you an appointment. A sign call, same number. It's 8 to 10 conversations of a sign call will lead to a quality appointment. Okay. Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com. I know we all have feelings about those. 1 in 10 conversations will lead to an appointment if you get to them within 5 minutes. If you get to them past 5 minutes, you're not going to see 1 out of 10. I don't actually even know what it is if you go beyond that. I know that usually 3% of online leads turn into an appointment right away. So 1 out of 10 if you get to them within 5 minutes. Okay, the next lead source. So this is forced registration. So this is someone who was on your website. They weren't allowed to look at the pictures unless they had to put in their information. So it's forced registration. We know that 15 to 20 conversations will lead to an appointment on that one. 15 to 20 conversations will get you an appointment. Circle prospecting, and this is the last one I have. Circle prospecting, 75 to 100 contacts will get you an appointment. 75 to 100 contacts get you to an appointment. And again, that's because you're calling the out of the blue neighborhood and just randomly asking, do you have a home to buy or sell? So that hopefully will give you some context. And that's why we have to be careful when we're masterminding, whether online or maybe we're at a conference and we hear someone over there say something about how many appointments should I expect from my person? I think, first of all, it depends on how many closings you need from them, what you should expect. And then secondly, it's going to depend on the lead source. The third factor is their skill level. And this is where we're going to get into script. Skill level is going to have a huge impact. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah. So just to also jump in on the circle prospecting lead source, there are a few more things that really will increase your conversion. And it's not so much your conversion, I should say, but your efficiency. One is utilizing a triple line auto dialer to make the calls. So you're getting through more numbers more quickly. And what it does is it just rings 3 separate phone numbers in the neighborhood at the same time. Whichever one answers, it connects you to that call, and the other 2 are stopped. So it pauses the dialing for the other 2 phone calls. And that just allows you to get through the list more efficiently. And then the other key factor to help you with your efficiency and conversion is calling neighborhoods that have a greater than 6% turnover rate. So if only 6% of the homes are selling each year or less than, it's not ideal. It's not going to be worth your while because you're not going to be finding sellers in there because nobody's selling. So what often we say about circle prospecting, just to reiterate what Anna says, is you could have anywhere from 20 contacts to 100 contacts before it will turn into an appointment. And the reason why that discrepancy is so large for circle prospecting is it depends on the turnover rate because it depends on the turnover rate. So if I call a neighborhood that has like a 40% turnover rate, I'm going to expect to make fewer contacts before finding that diamond in the rough, so to speak, just to give you some perspective on why that is such a big variable there for circle prospecting.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategy involved. It's not just pick a neighborhood and call.
Right.
You have to be purposeful. If you're wondering how to figure out the conversion rate or the turnover rate for a neighborhood, there's a website called melissadata.com. Melissa, like the girl's name, melissadata.com. And you can go in there and they will help you know what neighborhoods have what turnover ratios, so that if you're circle prospecting, you can be more intentional, like Katie just said.
And you could also figure it out if you have the time to look up the neighborhood data on like the post office site for when you're doing out mailers for neighborhoods and you want to get all the addresses. So you can look up to see how many homes are in a specific neighborhood, then cross check on your MLS, draw a map on that neighborhood and look to see how many homes have sold each year over the last 3 years to get a percentage of turnover. So, Melissa data, there's a cost for that. If you want to save costs and you have the time, that's how we used to do it in the very beginning at Howell Group. So that's just some insight for you there.
How to save some money. It's somebody typed in melissa.com. It's melissadata.com. So make sure you have the data on there.
Sorry, keep going.
To answer a question that came in the chat box, somebody asked about tiers, and I'll give you my gut reaction having been in ISA, and the idea of your percentages go up the more closings you have. I personally, just me, I would not find that super motivating, mostly because I understand that the team is making money, and I want, like, I found that person and set it up. Why would it change the more closings I have? That's just me. Also, it can be really complex if you do that.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, think of yourself here too. Like, you're going to be tracking this. You're going to be wanting to grade your return on investment, your cost of your lead source. When you're looking back and you're evaluating your business at the end of the year and you're trying to determine not just the lead costs for your ISAs and everything else, it can be extremely complex. And why make it that much harder for yourself, right? You just want to find people that are naturally motivated and results oriented. I don't think it's necessary to add in the tiers.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is if you're looking to bonus somebody over time based on their skill and performance, is if they have not yet proven themselves when you're hiring them, you start their base lower, or you can start them at a lower, 5% close rate. And as they prove themselves, you can bump it up, but then just keep it standard, keep it that level tier, if that makes sense. Not each time. Yeah. It's kind of like when you go into any role in a corporate environment where they say, okay, you're on probationary period. So for the first 30 days, we're going to start you at, $1,000 a month and a 5%. And if you prove yourself and you're still with the company in 6 months, we're going to increase the pay. That makes more sense to me.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Keep it simple. And this is just how I look at it. If we're keeping it super simple, if you want to reward them for their results and their skill, they'll naturally be rewarded because they'll have more closings. Mm-hmm. So even if you want to just keep it super simple and just keep them, they always get paid 5% or they always get paid 10%, whatever you pick. Well, they'll be rewarded for their skill the more closings that they have. So I know from coaching ISAs in the ISA coaching program, most of them, I don't ever hear them talking about, I want that increase in commission. They're talking about, I want more closings. That's what they're talking about. So that's another way to look at it. Okay, so let's talk about skill level and how can you tell, is my ISA average in the industry? Are they lagging behind, or they may be really fantastic? So here's some conversion rates to look at, and write this down. These are key. So contact to set, again, average is 5%, but it's going to vary on the lead source. So if they're circle calling, I'm thrilled if they hit 2%. So again, know the lead source. We already talked about that. However, once the appointment is set, you can count on the following conversion ratios, because once it's set, it's set. At that point, all leads are equal. If they agreed to an appointment, all leads are equal at that point. So set to held, meaning I set the appointment and it actually kept. What you should be expecting there is 70%. I will tell you, a lot of people come into our coaching program and they're down at the 40 to 50%. That's the most common range that I see when people come in. And we can quickly, if they're willing to put in the work, we can quickly get them up to 70%. I see it all the time. I have 3 examples just from this past month of teams that doubled their set to held ratio and are now in that 70% range. One of them is up at 87%. I'm actually talking to him about take some more risk because that almost might be too high. So set to held, 70%. Held to signed, meaning we met the appointment and they agreed to hire us as their agent, 80%. No less than 80%. I know several teams out there, and I think Katie, I know at one point the Heil group was there. I know the Haro group was there. 90% or higher was normal. So that's why I say no less than 80. It's not like 80 is, woohoo, you're stellar. I've seen it way higher than that, but don't go below 80 for set to held. And then signed to closed is 80%. So they signed on, they hired the team, 80% of them are closing. So what I would say is look at your numbers. And if you're not tracking this, that's part of where we can help you with the coaching program, is getting those systems in place. But if you're below set to held 70%, held to signed 80%, signed to closed 80%, that's a sign that we can help you through coaching, whether us through the ISA coaching program or through MAPS Mastery. That's a sign that we're not where we could be. And let's help you with that and think about the impact that that could make. So again, if you want to talk more one-on-one about that, go to isamapscoaching.com, click on Talk to a Coach, and you'll get me, Katie, Annalisa, one of the actual coaches, and we'll set a time to get on the phone with you. So let's do the script. We've been asked about that a lot, and then we'll hit the questions in the chat box. So Katie, what is a good script for people? We talked about in the webinar, we'd go over some objection handling scripts that we've helped our clients use to get those conversions up. So give us your best one for objections on the selling side. So maybe they say, I don't want to hire a name.
So a lot of times we'll hear when we're calling expired withdrawals, well, we're thinking about using the same agent. I mean, how common is that? It's pretty common, right? So whenever that happens, the key thing here is whenever you're getting an objection, you want to isolate the objection. You want to clarify it, make sure you're understanding what it is, right? And then you want to create doubt in that objection, right? So in the conversation, I'd say, hi, this is Katie. I'm a real estate professional. I was calling about your house on 1234 Main Street. I saw that it recently expired off the market. Is it still available? They would say, well, yes, I mean, it's not on the market currently, but we do plan to sell it. Okay, great. What's your timeline for selling, right? So I'm just asking a ton of questions. The more questions I ask, the more control I actually have in the conversation. It might seem kind of odd to think of it that way, but really I want my client, my prospect, to be doing 80% of the conversing and me to be doing 20%. If they say, well, yeah, no, we plan on putting it back on the market probably in another 4 weeks. We're just waiting until then. I would then ask, oh, okay, well, will you share with me what specifically about that timeline is important to you in waiting, right? So again, just digging. Throughout the conversation, they'll come along with the objection of, well, we're thinking about hiring back our agent. And that objection typically comes after I've already asked for the appointment, right? So I'll say something to the effect of, well, are you familiar with what we do to get homes sold? Well, no. Great. Then it sounds like we should meet. Which days work best for you? Well, actually, we're considering we're just going to hire back our old agent. So what I want to do then is create some doubt around that. Okay, well, what specifically do you think your agent's going to do differently this time than the last time?
Yeah.
If we could show you a way to help you achieve your goal, because throughout this conversation, the number one thing I'm looking for before I even go for the close, or if I am going to close, I want to circle back to this quickly, is the motivation. Why are they selling their house, right? So through the line of questioning, I'm uncovering that, and I'm going back to it. Well, if we could show you a way to close your home, hit the price that you're wanting, and get you to Florida by this summer, which you've already told me is really important to you, would it make sense to interview us for the job, right? So that's a very, very common objection we get for the expired role play.
Yeah, that's really good. And notice a key in overcoming that was going back to motivation. So I'm going to give you guys another, it's not really a script, it's more of a language pattern. Mm-hmm. And the difference is a script is, here are some prescribed words to say these words. A language pattern is more follow this order. Put your own words on it, but follow this order. So here's a language pattern. Write this down. This can be used for any lead source. So I saw a question come in about how does this work for social media leads? This pattern I'm about to give you works for any lead source. So if you're out to dinner with your best friend and they talk about, I'm thinking about moving, you could use this pattern in that scenario. If a social media lead comes in, you can use it in that scenario. If a sign call comes in. So you guys get my point. I don't care where the lead came from. You can always follow the 4 parts I'm about to give you. And this is something we hit hard in the coaching program. They hear it at least once a month. It's constant because it's that key and that foundational. So number 1 is always motivation. You always talk to them about motivation first. And Katie just gave a great example. Katie, why do we go over motivation first?
God, it is the most important thing. It's the only way you know for sure if these people are going to sell or not. And it's the tool you can use to convince them to listen to you and hire you and meet with you. It's so important.
And that's why it's first. A lot of times, and there's no judgment around this, I just want you to think about yourself for a minute on your lead calls. If you go straight into pre-qualification, all that logical stuff, when do you want to move? When do you want to be there? Tell me about the house. You don't know anything about their motivation. So if you hit an objection, you don't really have a tool to overcome that objection. You can't say, like Katie just did, I know you said moving to Florida was really important to you. Wouldn't it make sense to overcome this objection? So that's why motivation is first. Without it, you don't have leverage. You do not have the tool that you need to help your client. So number
Also,
1, motivation.
I'm a high D, and I don't want to waste my time on the phone with people. That's,
Yeah.
I want to get through. So if I'm talking to somebody and hitting their motivation and they're not motivated, bye. Right?
Yeah, totally agree.
It helps with your efficiency. So keep going.
No, I totally agree. And I want to speak to the high Ds because I am one as well. I used to be kind of like, why do I need to ask about the motivation? It takes 3 minutes. And it really usually only takes about 3 minutes. And I had to change my thinking to, I would rather have a little bit of a slower conversation in order to have faster results. And when I switched my thinking to slower conversation equals faster results, I got much more engaged in going for the motivation. So number 1 is motivation. You're going to transition with this phrase. So write this down. After you get the motivation, you're going to say, great, let's see what we need to do to make that happen. Then you are going to go into part number 2, which is pre-qualify. And that's all the logical stuff that you guys are probably really good at because that's what we usually gravitate towards anyway. So number 1 is motivation. Great, Katie. Sounds like you want to move to Florida to be closer to your family. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. Number 2 is pre-qualify. That transition statement will avoid the comment of, why are you asking me all these questions? So when you say, let's see what we need to do to make it happen for you to get to Florida to live near your family, now there's some context for the game of 20 questions I'm about to play with them on, tell me about your house. How much do you owe? Now they know why. So number 1, motivation. Number 2, pre-qualify. Number 3, the actual step is, your next step is. So you're going to guide them as to, okay, great. Your next step is, and you're going to know that by pre-qual. So it might be, okay, great, Katie, your next step is to talk to a lender. Or our next step is to meet together. Mm-hmm. Or your next step is to talk to your husband tonight and see where he is in his mindset about moving. So you will know what the next step is based off the pre-qualification conversation. You'll figure out where they are. The 4th and final step is to assign a deadline. Give it a deadline. So let me put all that together in a quick role play with Katie, and then we'll go to the questions box. So again, number 1, motivation. 2 is pre-qual. 3 is next step. 4 is deadline. So Katie, be super succinct with me, and we'll do a role play real fast.
Okay.
So Katie, moving is a ton of hard work. What has you thinking about moving?
Well, my mother's sick and my kids are out of the nest, so I just think it's time I go back home.
Okay, great. And I would ask some more questions, and then I'd say, okay, great, Katie. Sounds like you want to move to be closer to your mother, have your kids near them. Let's see what we need to do to make that happen. So tell me about this house you have to sell. How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms?
4 beds, 17 baths. It's in amazing condition. It's the best house in the neighborhood. I think you're not going to have any problem selling it personally.
Okay, perfect. So Katie, our next step is to meet together so we can help put together a game plan and get this house sold and get you to your mother's hometown. Let me put you on hold and check the calendar, and we'll pick an appointment time. And then I would, okay, 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock, which one can you commit to? And now we have our deadline. Okay.
2:00.
Yeah. So that's what that looks like in super abbreviated form. If
Notice
you,
how she says commit to, if you're talking about those kept ratios.
yeah, that's the number one thing that increases the kept ratio. So it's not what time's best for you or, hey, when are you free? It's, I've got this or that. What can you commit to? So again, motivation, pre-qual, next step, deadline. That's your order, regardless of lead source. That will help you set more, keep more, and get more people signed.
And one thing I want to talk about scripts real quick, everyone, is first of all, our program has like so many different resources of scripts. It's mind blowing how many are out there. And sometimes I almost think that that's a negative for agents in your position that are looking to hire ISAs because there's just so much. What I would say is probably my best rule of thumb for scripts is to identify key scripts that you know are proven, you know that work, which all of those are in our program, and that you like. I every time I talk to people, my mind is blown when they say, "Oh, I don't script. It sounds too cheesy." I'm like, "You're getting the wrong scripts for you." And sure, there's some scripts that I've heard coworkers say that I just would never feel comfortable saying, but they nail it because it's in alignment with their personality, their behavior. So I would just recommend identify some scripts based on the lead sources that you're calling, sellers, buyers, and pick the ones you like and commit to internalizing them. Then from there, as you hire on ISAs into your company, it's so incredibly important to verify that they know the scripts. It's not enough to go in there for the first week and say, here's your script, say it back to me, okay, you're good. You have to constantly, and I cannot stress this enough, constantly inspect what you expect of their scripting.
Yeah.
As well as other aspects of the job. But that is one common area that people just say, well, I showed them how to do it 2 weeks ago, last September. I don't know. Sure, I'm sure they know it. I'm sure they're doing it. I just don't understand why I'm not getting an appointment set. It's like, go back and listen to them, because like if they're on the phones, if you can verify they're on the phones making calls and they're not being successful, it is the script. It is the skill. There's something that they're doing. They might have gone completely rogue and made up their own script. Or they might have adopted some bad habits like filler words and some upswings, things like that. But I really can't stress it enough to inspect what you expect. Sorry, tangent there.
And Katie, that's what Tim did for Katie, because I heard her process, and we don't have time to explain all of that now. But Katie sold 144 homes her first year, in large part because her team owner inspected what he expected. He did the model that Gary talks about of I do it, meaning I will show you how to do it. Then we do it together. So we'll go on appointments together, or we'll make lead gen calls together. And then after I do it and then we do it, then you do it, and I'll just observe you do it. And then after that, you're free. And that's what Haro did for me as well. He sat in my office with me, and Haro and I made phone calls together, and I heard him. And that's where a lot of my skill came from, was listening to a talented team owner. He didn't just put me in a room by myself. I actually heard what he was doing. So here's what we're going to do. I just came up with an idea based off the chat box. So I'm going to give you 2 resources that you can utilize today and where to find them to get some of the scripts you're asking us for. And then honestly, so many fantastic questions have come in. And I think it's because a lot of you are, I'm gathering, like the sales director or maybe the rainmaker, that your question box is going to become content for one of our future webinars, because we simply are out of time today, yet we want to help you. So let me give you a couple spots for resources. Number 1, we have a Facebook group. It's not, and I'm going to emphasize, it is not a MAPS Facebook group. It's a Facebook group that I personally started about 5 years ago. However, I run it, and I'm a MAPS coach. And so a lot of what's in there is related to MAPS coaching. It's called ISA Mastermind Group. Super creative, I know. So Hannah put that into the chat box. So check the chat box. You should see the link. ISA Mastermind Group. You'll be asked questions to join the group, and I do not let people in if they don't answer the questions. I'm really big in protecting the integrity of that group and making sure we have the right people in there. So make sure you answer the questions. Once you're in that group, go to the videos tab and go to the files tab. I've uploaded over the years tons of scripts. Some of you were asking about ads for ISAs. What do those look like? It's in the files section of the Facebook group. I have a 30, 60, 90. So some of you were asking, what are the expectations the first 90 days? That's in the Facebook group. So ISA Mastermind group, go to files and go to videos, and that will help you. The second resource is isamapscoaching.com. That's our ISA coaching page, obviously. And there's a webinars tab, and there's probably now, I don't even know, I mean, probably 20 some webinars in there, all an hour long, of all different topics. So some of you were asking scripts about seller scripts. What I would do is go to that webinars tab and scroll through and look for the topic that you were asking about if we didn't get it today. Also, isamapscoaching.com is where you can say, I'd like to talk to a coach, or I'm ready to enroll. And that's the best way we can help you. Through Facebook, through webinars, it's more general. It's not specific to your business. And so if you want specific help and to really up your game, that's where a coach comes in. You need someone talking to you one-on-one. And we can talk to you about Mastery or this program. So some of you are asking, like, which one's right for me? We can just go click on talk to a coach and we'll get with you. Let me just read this real quick.
Somebody did ask about overseas VAs versus in-house ISAs.
Okay. Do you want to field that, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, real quick overview, pros and cons of both. Pros of outsourced VAs is typically the company that you're using says we train them, we monitor them, we manage them, we can guarantee you X amount of leads per month. So that's a pro, that it's self-managed to an extent. The con is typically it's more expensive than if you were to bring them in-house and do it yourself. And then the biggest con I've seen is overseas ISAs typically struggle to set as many appointments as anybody that you bring in-house due to various language barriers, culture differences. The best example I have for this is not 100% PC, so don't get mad at me. And Anna's like, oh my God, I'm terrified. But for example, we did use a virtual assistant years ago, and we had a really hard time. And we realized there was just a difference in language when we were trying to explain the difference between a butt dial and a booty call. So just and how things can get lost in translation from anybody that's a non-native English speaker or not familiar with the area. Pros and cons of in-house ISA, you have a better return on investment in-house. The con is it does take more time management, more involvement to work with that person and help them be a top-level skilled ISA. But again, they typically are able to even set more appointments and perform at a higher rate to boost that ROI because they're in-house, local, and they are surrounded by talent and you and everybody. So, yeah.
Well, and part of what it is, and I'll just say, I used to be a virtual ISA, not overseas, obviously, but through some family circumstances and health with my family, I worked from home for a period of time as an ISA for my real estate team. And I was still setting appointments, but my energy tanked. The other thing is I wasn't hearing the successes because I wasn't in the office. And the successes helped me set appointments. So say that I was in the hallway getting coffee and our buyer agent walked by, and I could ask him, give me a success that I could use on the phone today. And I remember one time our buyer agent said, I won a multiple offer against 6 people yesterday. Well, I used that for the next week on the phone. If I talked to a buyer and they were like, I don't know, I don't really want to meet with somebody, I could say, listen, you really want to meet with Nate? He actually won a multiple offer against 6 people yesterday. You want him in your corner. Well, when I'm not with the team, I'm not hearing all that. So my energy tanks. I don't have as much to use on the phone. So I do think virtual ISAs can be really great for circle prospecting. You do have to know your state and what's allowed. So that's one thing I'll say is check state regulations, because sometimes you can't even use virtual ISAs depending on your state law. So check into that, but they can be good for creating leads that wouldn't have existed. They're not always the best at creating leads that converting leads that you've paid for. But they can be great for finding that 1 in 100 on a circle call. Okay, we're out of time and we want to respect your time. Hannah, if we can somehow capture the questions that came into the chat box, that will help us create what our next webinar will be about. But again, isamapscoaching.com. Check out the tabs. You'll find a lot of your answers there. We've already got a lot of webinars. And then the ISA Mastermind group on Facebook, check out the files tab. You'll see a lot of good stuff in there as well.
And then if you have a question that you really want answered, contact a coach through our page. And like Anna said, it's her, I, or Annalisa that will respond. It's not fake. We'll help you.
Yeah. And we actually, don't be afraid that we're going to like, you have to enroll in the program. There are times that we've talked to people and it's like, I don't think this program's right for you. Here's a different group program, or I don't think it's the right time for you yet. So we do not want to enroll you if you're not truly the right fit for right now. So we will help you the best we can and advise you on what makes sense on your situation. So don't feel like checking the box means we're going to get in the program. We want what's best for you. All right, guys, sounds like we're getting a lot of positive comments. We love you. We'll see you on the next webinar. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.